Hello guys, welcome to another backtesting video. Today I have came back with a backtesting video that I found interesting, and our setup was literally to the T in this trade, so I wanted to show to you guys. Okay, so now let me start from DXY this time. Every time I start from GU, but this time let's start from DXY. So it was a New Year's week. Friday, Monday was closed. Tuesday the market opened a huge bullish candle, and for your information, DXY the weekly bias was bullish, and the daily bias after this candle, what will be my daily bias after a candlestick closure like this? Tell me. It will be bullish, bro. Obviously it will be bullish. No meaning, yeah, it has a chance to go and rebalance the price. Also it has a chance to continue to the downside as the overall trend is bearish, but until and unless the market shows me that it wants to go down, no, I refuse to do that. So I adapt to the market, I don't predict. That's why this is the lower low, this is the lower high, and until now it is not showing any signs that it's rejecting the supply zone, whereas there was also a fair value gap and it has filled the fair value gap. You can see Tuesday it filled up the fair value gap to the T, but it did not reject. If it, after filling up the fair value gap, if it has given a wick, then we could have considered that, but in this case it didn't, so it is what it is. So my daily bias on DXY is bullish, whereas on GU it will be the opposite. If I show you, it's very clean. On GU, literally the weekly bias was bearish because of how the weekly candle closed. From this sort of supply, there was a supply, there is a supply, I mean there is a weekly supply right here. It is a bearish pin bar. I want to show you, but guys, I will show you on the weekly breakdown video, but right now I can't show you guys because of this is a trade backtest. It is a single day trade backtest, so wait for a weekly breakdown video to be uploaded. Okay, whereas on Tuesday, 2nd January, the market literally made a very bearish move with the bias, higher time frame bias being bearish. So going on Wednesday, I was looking for sales. This was my daily bias, so not wasting any time, let's go to the lower time frames now to show you the analysis. Also on the 4 hourly, you can see the market has changed character to the downside, a huge fair value gap here if it wants to reverse, but obviously I'm looking for sales, so this is irrelevant for now. And there is also a H4 fair value gap here to fill, so which also gives us extra confidence that the market can go and at least fill up this fair value gap before continuing to the upside. So that was what I was looking for. And going on the hourly, it's simple, bro. I'm trading with the trend, so 4 hourly change character to the downside. So obviously now on the hourly I will draw the supply zones, order blocks, because on the 4 hourly there was an order block here, so it doesn't make sense for me to go all the way here. It can, but we don't do that because we are intraday traders, we are not swing traders. If I was a swing trader, then I would have done that, like I would have waited for this supply zone to mitigate it and then monitor that zone, but I'm an intraday trader, right? So that's why. So this H4 was my target for the day, targeting this fair value gap to fill, and this is when I go to the H1 and show you this fair value gap right here, right? There is a clear, clean fair value gap. This is the closest fair value gap. You can argue there is a fair value gap here, fair value gap here, fair value gap there, but I mark the closest fair value gap because according to me the trend is so bearish, so strong, that it doesn't need to always go to the top fair value gap. It can fill up the first fair value gap, and if it has swept enough liquidity, then it can have it move from that point itself. And obviously after that, now let me show you DXY. Okay, it was DXY, yeah. Oh, let me show you DXY quickly. So on DXY, the same sort of thing, 4 hour change character to the upside, 4 hourly change character to the upside. There was a 4 hour fair value gap, but it was against the bias, but my bias was bullish, so there was also a H4 fair value gap which got filled. In DXY, the only difference was the H4 fair value gap got filled, but it was not rejecting from that fair value gap, so yeah, that was irrelevant for us. And there was some sort of demand that I marked somewhere around here, so this was the H1 demand that I've marked. Now we don't trade DXY, so obviously the main analysis will be done on GBP USD, so please focus. Whereas here on H1 fair value gap, I mark the H1 fair value gap. After marking the H1 fair value gap, you know what I do, you know my drill, you know the drill by now. obviously I wait for the Asian range to close, because until and unless the Asian range closes, our strategy, our setup can't appear, right? So that's what I waited for. So obviously if I am looking for sells, I want the Asian high to get swept. There was previous structural liquidity here, and I marked this sort of supply zone on the M15. So my thought process was Asian high liquidity sweep, previous structural liquidity sweep, M15 rejection, and then a move from here to the downside. And also the previous day low was not swept early on the day, which is a good sign for us to take the trade. So this is when I was looking for a trade. Obviously 12:30 we got everything we want to see in a trade. Asian high liquidity sweep, previous structural liquidity sweep, rejection from the M15 supply. Everything I just told you was here. So if I had entered here, but the only problem was this was not our timing. 12:30, and also when I compared it with DXY, it was not making sense, because the DXY didn't sweep Asian low. It can go and sweep the Asian low before making the move, whereas also EU didn't sweep the Asian high. So two things were saying us that it is not yet ready to make the move. So that is why I didn't enter the trade in the backtesting. Whereas now I will wait for this to induce. There is also an H1 fair value gap, so we can still monitor this zone. But if you would have entered here, the only mistake, everything was there, but the only mistake would be it was not our timing. This was 7 AM UK time, so we trade 8 AM UK time, right after the 8 AM UK time candle opens. So exactly we waited for that. The perfect inducement happened. There was a rejection on 1:45 PM, and the H1 fair value gap got filled like 80 to 90%, and then the rest was history. Literally it played out to the T. The trade played out to the T, and also you can see there DXY aligned. At last DXY aligned and took the previous day high, also respected my demand zone that I've marked. And EU, we could have also traded EU right here. EU has swept the Asian high, gave inducement, and then pretty much made the move. In this case EU was more beautiful than GU, but we trade GU, so it is what it is. Also I have back tested it, so I can look up to this anytime. And yeah,